Welcome, and thank you for joining our LPG Talks Live today. I'm André Pimentel, and I'm with ANOVA, the remote tank monitoring partner and industry council member of the World LPG Association. It is an absolute pleasure to host the first edition of the LPG Talks Live series in 2022. Today, we will be discussing digital innovation in the LPG industry. We have had a lot of interest in this session. Thank you all for signing up and tuning in today. We hope that you find this session helpful, informative, and actionable. Let me just remind you that this is a World LPG Association meeting and is therefore governed by the World LPG Association statutes, specifically our antitrust guidelines, which prohibits the discussion of commercial sensitive information such as pricing, volumes, market share, etc. In today's session, we will have a discussion panel around digitalization and innovation in the LPG industry, and you can see how it can foster growth. We will hear from Cindy Brill, Director of Delivery Operations at Holtzman Propane, how ANOVA Transform helped Holtzman Propane to drive digitalization and efficiency. Also, we will have Ellen Wang, CEO of Centank and winner of the World LPG Challenge in 2021, who will speak about her experience and her plans for the future. But first things first, I'm very happy to welcome James Rockwell, CEO and Managing Director of the World LPG Association. Welcome, James, and thank you so much for joining us and kicking off our session today.
Thank you, Andre, and thank you also, of course, to ANOVA for your support, your continued support to this series of webinars. Good day, everyone, and welcome to this first LPG Talks Live of 2022. We're finally, gradually emerging from the COVID pandemic that's been hitting us right across the world for the last 2 years. But now we face the new challenge of war in Europe. So I'd like to just start by saying that my thoughts with everybody that's impacted by this, and the LPG industry will do everything it can to support European energy security in the immediate term, but also in the longer term, as we look to, as we seek diversified and secure sources of energy. Now, let me turn to the subject of today's webinar, which, as you've seen, is digital innovation in LPG, reaching beyond traditional boundaries. Now, one of our key strategic goals in our current plan is business improvement. Business improvement covers a whole host of issues, including safety, diversification, improved efficiency, but it also covers the adoption of IoT. We do this to make our businesses safer, but also to make them smarter. Now, between 2005 and 2020, the number of devices connected to the internet grew by a factor of over 100. The global population in that same time grew by just about a fifth. So clearly what we see is many more devices are connected to the internet per capita. And what this does is it's led to a massive change in the way that people interact with each other. You know, we all have our smartphones. We wouldn't know what to do without our smartphones, but our internets, our televisions, you know, sometimes our fridges. But it also interacts with, it affects the way businesses interact with themselves and with each other in their supply chains. The recent IoT report that we produced at the end of last year, that I'm sure everybody has had a chance to look at and study, it told us that the LPG industry is lagging with the introduction of digitalization, perhaps by as much as 10 years compared to, for instance, the telecom sector. We also spend far less on IoT compared to other industries. Yet the opportunity that digitalization offers applies throughout the full LPG value chain, right away from the wellhead through supply and distribution and all the way to the end consumer. So we've got a big opportunity out there, and we seem to be a little bit behind. Now, we may be behind, but during the next hour, we're going to hear from some people and some pioneers in digitalization in our industry who are going to show how we are catching up. Now, we had about 250 people registered for this webinar, both members of WLPGA, but also non-members. And if you are one of those non-members, and if you want to join us, please get in touch with any of us. There's a lot of benefits from being a member, including being part of a very powerful network in the business. And with that, I'll pass it back to you, Andre, and enjoy LPG Talks Live, everybody.
Thank you, James. Thank you so much for your words and for kicking off the session. And now we will be jumping into a success case study where the adoption of industrial IoT with a focus on data analytics and change management brought efficiency to Holtzman Propane, an LPG distributor company based out of Virginia, US. And for this, I'm delighted to have with us Cindy Brill. Cindy is the director of the delivery operations at Holtzman Propane. She has been there for 13 years and followed very closely this process. Welcome, Cindy. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Thank you. So let's start a little bit to get to know you better and Holtzman Propane. Can you give us some background on Cindy, who is Cindy, what you do, and Holtzman Propane?
Well, as you said, I've been working with Holtzman Propane for 13 years. We're going to be celebrating our 25th anniversary this year. So for more of about half of the birth of the company, and we're just super excited to be a part of this program. We're what we would call a mid-size regional company, marketer in the eastern region of the US, mostly Virginia, parts of West Virginia, North Carolina, Maryland, and Pennsylvania. We started our monitor program in about 2014, and we're now at about 64% automatic and 36% will call, but those used to be reversed before we started with Rob and Innova and that wonderful team there. They've really helped us get into the 21st century.
Thank you for that. And when we think about that transformation, that digitalization, some of the things that really speak to other companies is the challenges, is for the companies to know that you previously had the same challenges that you were able to solve. So what were the challenges that you had before the implementation of industrial IoT and digitalization?
So prior to our tank monitoring program and integrating with Cargus, we had challenges like everyone else. The peak winter demand, staffing is a huge issue, particularly in the trucks. And we just didn't have the ability to track usage. We relied on the unreliable degree day calculations, and then dealing with unpredictable pricing and supply, and all of those challenges sort of stifled our growth and have really crippled our business at times. And these challenges exist today, but to a much, much lesser degree because of all of the digital innovation.
That's impressive, and I think that a lot of LPG distributor companies around the world are feeling the same challenges. One of the other points that it's frequently brought as preventive to adopting a digitalization is the process and how hard it can be. Can you describe the process of digitalization and the implementation of the tank monitoring program at Holtzman?
I'd be lying if I said it was easy, but I will say that the migration from the AS400 to Cargus and the migration of our data to Transform and the Innova platform, our operations team worked hand in hand with Innova, and they were an integral part of that success. It was so smooth in comparison to lots of other innovation and integration that I've been through.
So thank you for sharing that. I know change is never easy, but ultimately it pays off, right?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. It's in the numbers.
and talking about paying off, can you share some of the improvements brought by digitalization and the strategy you implemented? How do you measure this success?
Oh, goodness. The wonderful thing about having the data analytics software transformed, it allows us to pull a report card anytime and measure our success with the click of a few buttons, which is really nice. We doubled our average gallons per shift. We're really excited about that this year, from about 2,400 gallons to 5,000 and 6,000 gallons. That is a huge win for us. Even bigger than that, our run out rate has dropped. 2018, we were just under 2%. Now we're at 0.2% monitored and 0.8% unmonitored. And so the important thing to remember is that analytics, looking at the data in depth like that can really help you in both the monitored and digital customer as well as the Wilcox customer. They really help partner in your business and help you raise the bar across the board.
Thank you for sharing, and that has been some impressive results, and hopefully we can help to drive the industry into the, as you mentioned, the 21st century. These are just some of the great achievements that can be done by digitalization. Can help you. Naturally, you need to drive the change internally as well. What advice would you share with the LPG industry regarding the implementation of a digitalization strategy?
I would say first and foremost, make sure you engage your folks, involve them in the process. Make sure you have a good back office software company and people who can support the integration. You don't want the process or software to hold you back from what the digital world has to offer. The innovation is endless. So be open-minded, work with your telemetry partner. Innova has been wonderful in the transport platform, identifying where we can get the most bang for our buck, where that return on investment really hits home. And when you start saving, hundreds of thousands of dollars in savable fills, it matters. So go through the process with an open mind. That would be my best advice.
Thank you, Cindy. Thank you very much. We can hear that this small interview, I had so much more questions. I'll definitely catch up with you, but I'm going to plead to the audience if you want to throw some questions to Cindy. She'll be with us in the panel discussion later today. So feel free to input your questions in the chat box. Cindy, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Our pleasure. And with this, we are moving forward into the next point in the agenda. And let me introduce Alan Wang, CEO of Centec, and also winner of the World LPG Challenge in 2021. Congratulations, Alan. Thank you so much. Can you briefly make an introduction?
Thank you. And I'm Ellen from Centec. I'm CEO of Centec, and our team is working on the intelligent driving fatigue detection system based on the sensing technology and artificial intelligence.
Thank you, Alan. And to bring some clarity and some insights into our audience about what Centec is and what it brings to the market, to all the markets, and specifically also for LPG. I'm going to request to play a short video on Centec. So if you can roll the video.
Yeah. I think the sound doesn't work.
We might have we will be just double checking on the sound.
Yeah.
There it is.
Nice.
Around the 70% of fatal crashes were fatigue related. For oil and energy company, safety driving is a top priority. However, fatigue driving accounts for the highest number of total fatalities in the oil and energy industry. Therefore, for the purpose of vehicle safety, it is important to install an in-vehicle monitoring system to manage fatigue driving. Fatigue detection based on physiological signals can significantly improve the accuracy and the robustness compared to facial detection and vehicle's movements. Especially for microsleep, a brief state of drowsy unconsciousness that can happen even if your eyes remain open. Sentech team is working on advanced technological solutions that go beyond the facial and vehicle's movements. Microfield smart ring is developed based on physiological sensing and AI algorithm. When fatigue is detected, the smart ring can remind you with the sound, vibration, and light. Compared to other methods, physiological sensing technology can detect fatigue even earlier, so that greatly reduces the possibilities of driving accidents. Meanwhile, our team is exploring how drivers' fatigue status can be relieved through media consumption. For instance, how to create news content or music to arouse drivers' attention in a transportation scenario. Now our team is working with manufacturers and automobile suppliers to bring the technology one step further. In an intelligent cockpit scenario, we are developing a demo system for real-time driving fatigue monitoring. The system can alert drivers' fatigue and provide personalized service to arouse drivers' attention, such as customized audio information, music, and fragrance odor. All the data will be transferred into the backstage. For the most dangerous fatigue state, drivers can be asked for an obligatory rest. For administration team, intelligent working shift can be arranged based on drivers' fatigue data. Driving monitoring system is still a big market for automobile industry. For oil and energy industry, effective monitoring and management of fatigue driving can greatly reduce the probability of car accidents. We have a successful engineering product through the collaboration with automobile industry, media company, and music suppliers in China. In the future, we foresee that insurance company can be collaborated together to create different vehicle insurance products. Besides, in a driving scenario, it may change the production ecosystem for media and music companies because it calls for customized content production based on psychophysiological feedback of drivers. Our team is looking for a new collaboration and a funding possibility to bring our technology to all of the world. If you like our product, please vote for us. Stay alert, arrive alive.
That's so great video. Well, no need to vote
Thank
anymore.
you.
You have won, and so congratulations on winning again. It's really an impressive solution, and for an industry that delivers LPG mostly by trucks, either fillings or cylinder deliveries, it's a super important development into the industry that you brought into the industry. So again, congratulations. And talking about the challenge, how did you hear about this challenge, the World LPG Challenge competition?
Yeah, actually, our team was searching on the internet. Then we found a platform called fcx.com. It is a really good platform for startups to find a lot of challenging possibilities. That's why we found the LPG challenge. We saw that it is a really amazing one for us. Yeah.
Thank you. That's good to know. We'll certainly want to improve that, and we'll be launching the World LPG Challenge this year. In March this month, and reaching out to the startup community around the world, it's absolutely crucial. So thank you for the feedback. And now more a little bit about Sentech and the industry. How was winning this competition open any opportunities for you?
Yeah, this is a really good competition because when we won the first prize, we received a lot of attention from the oil and energy companies. Especially, we start to talk to the several oil and energy companies. They are just responsible for the logistics transportation for LPG. So they really like our products. We think this is really great opportunities to participate in this competition. Thank you.
That's impressive. Really proud that that when such a solution important as this can get traction within the industry, that's just, you know, and help to save lives. That's just awesome. So what are your plans for commercialization of this device?
Yeah, so from the video, actually, you saw the first version of our smart ring, and we already reached the MVP stage. So now, actually, due to the advanced supply chain in China, we started to looking for to produce the second version of the ring. We have a discussion with IMEC located in Brazil. Brussels, and we are going to collaborate with them to working on the hardware innovation and nanotechnology, and we'll be working together to commercialize our production. Thanks.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Alan. Would you like to give any advice for those companies that are out there that may apply to the Startup Challenge? And what would be your advice?
Yeah, I really encourage startup companies to participate in the LPG competition because it's really great platform to talk to the expertise from LPG industry. I also encourage all the companies from LPG industry to work together with the startup companies to work out fantastic solutions to digitalization of the LPG industry. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. And lastly, you know, in terms of plans for the company, are you looking for funding? What's the current stage of the company?
Yeah, I really would like to have a company to work with us to like join the project together to have a test with our production and also to give us advice what kind of how to say configuration of the hardware we need to change it or how we can integrate the system into the LPG industry. We really need expertise advice from LPG industry. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Alan. Thank you. And I'm sure you'll get it. I've heard it has been a point of interest, your solution. So I'm really looking forward to hear more from you and to hear more on SETEC achievements. And to all our viewers today, please, if you are interested in this solution, if you think this can help the security and safety of your drivers, please feel free to reach out to Alan Wang and you know, just try at least a proof of concept and see how that can improve and save lives.
Thanks.
And our pleasure, Alan. Thank you so much. And before moving into the panel discussion, we would like to launch a new poll that helps us to set the stage and understand where all of you are in this digitalization highway. So if you can load, so where are you on this digitalization journey? Our operational is fully digitalized end to end. The majority of our operation is digitalized. We have some digitalization, or we have very little to no digitalization. So please feel free to answer. We will stop it more or less at 80% participation. So please keep voting. And while you are voting, I would like to take the opportunity to mention that we will be launching the World LPG Challenge this month in March. And so please stay tuned. It's going to be focused on digitalization and feel free to share with and help us to share it among the startup community all around the world. We are very good communicating into the industry. We are improving on how we communicate to outside the industry, and we definitely need all your help we can get to reach out to the industry. And so please, we are still voting. So we are at 55% participation. Let's just give it another couple more seconds. So feel free to vote. And we think we can close it. Thank you so much for voting. And thank you so much for voting. And the winner is, we have some digitalization. So 50% of the companies are in the middle. So they start the digitalization. They still realize that they are not fully digitalized. And we have 6% that has digitalized. And 27% have very little to no digitalization in their operations. So I'm sure that with this session, and we expect that with this session, we help you to, and we incentivize you to look into digitalization solutions in order to make your business safer, smarter, and more efficient. And with that, we are going to move forward. And so we'll have a panel session. And so for this panel session, I would like to introduce David Tyler. So,
Andre, hi.
Hi, David. So, moving on to, we'll now have a discussion panel on how Industrial IoT is digitalizing the LPG industry. To lead this, we have David Tyler, Director of the World LPG Association, responsible for business improvement goal that holds digitalization and IoT as one of the key topics. Welcome, David.
Thanks very much, Andre, and welcome to everybody who has joined this this discussion. I have to first of all make an apology for Tucker Perkins, who's had his schedule changed, and right now I think he's either in the air or just about to land in the US. He was flying out last night, but his flight was cancelled. So Tucker has said that he will join us if he can at the end of the panel discussion, and we look forward to that if he can. In the meantime, we have three other participants on the panel. You've heard from Cindy Brill already, and I'm going to bring Cindy back and ask her a couple of questions on the humanizing side of her application of digitalization at Holtzman. And the other two members of the panel I've known for a while, Nick Quinton, who's the CEO and co-founder of Pago Energy, based in Kenya, and Nervan Brijil from the South African LPG Association also joins us. So we have three on the panel plus myself, and I'm going to bring Andre in if I need to answer some very hard questions if you throw them in. Put them on the chat box, any questions that you have, and Andre will pick them up and let us know. So please take this opportunity to ask any questions, even from the previous interviews that we've heard earlier during the session. So let me first start off with a question to, I would have asked Tucker, but I'm going to ask Nick Quinton. Nick, you and I met several years ago in Nairobi when you introduced me to your smart meter. And what I'd like you to do is just just briefly describe what it is, and then bring us up to date with where you are with the technology and what you've got in store in the future.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me, David, and thanks for the question. Yes, since we met years ago in Nairobi, we've been on quite a journey at Pago. We're developing a totally new hardware and software solutions. We've been through kind of an innovation phase, and we're now transitioning over to commercialization and scaling up. Our technology in its simplest form locks onto a gas cylinder and allows customers to purchase gas on a fractional basis. So in markets like Kenya, where customers can afford to buy a full cylinder of gas, or a large portion of the population can, through our device, you can purchase just what you need to cook for the day using mobile money, kind of a prepay system. So when their account balance runs out, access is shut off. The second part of our solution is more on the software side. So we're taking that unique information from the household and also digitizing kind of key points at the end of the supply chain that are broadly kind of analog today to help better inform the supply chain and improve service to the household. That's what we call our tag and trace system. And yeah, as far as where we're headed. So as I mentioned, we've been kind of on this journey to develop this new smart meter. Today, we have a technology that's fully certified and is in multiple markets in East Africa, South Asia, and Southeast Asia. We're doing about 30,000 payments a month through our system, and we should be in about 13,000 households by the end of Q4. We're a little bit behind our original kind of growth plans due to the pandemic and constraints on the supply chain, but we should be ramping up to about 100,000 households in 2023.
Right now, the principle behind the smart meter is to bring the financial entry barrier down for people who want to use LPG, because your target market are the users of traditional fuels like wood and charcoal and kerosene. And to move from that to LPG requires investment in cylinder, hose, hot plate. And what you're doing is basically taking that financial barrier away by putting that equipment on almost on consignment, and then allowing the customer to communicate with the bank with, I guess, like a smartphone, talking to the bank, talking to you, or talking to the LPG supplier. And it's quite a difference, isn't it, between buying your fuel and watching it stacked up in the corner of the room, and then applying the smart meter to almost buy invisibly the energy that you require. What sort of challenges did you have in the early days with that from the consumer's point of view?
Oh, it's a great question. I think it's not a let's say, and Kenya is a great place, I guess, for us to start, because the population here is very used to kind of pay-as-you-go models. They're early adopters of technology. They're used to using mobile money. The prevalence of mobile money is at over 90% of the population here in Kenya. So I think we picked an easy market. That being said, at the household level, there were some challenges getting customers to understand how the system would work. So it's a little bit abstract to purchase basically an amount of credit to purchase gas, and then kind of draw on that as you cook, compared to buying a full cylinder and watching the fuel go down until it goes out. That being said, it's much more similar to how they purchase fuel today. So they're buying charcoal, kerosene, and wood in small amounts. And so we're really just trying to match their behavior. So there was some behavior change that was needed, but again, in Kenya, a lot of the kind of base knowledge was already there for customers that went after.
Right. Okay, Nick. I'll come back to you with the development on that question. Let me turn now to Nervin. Nervin, what role would you say does innovation play in the South African market?
Morning, afternoon, everyone, and yeah, thanks for the opportunity and the question, David. I think James touched earlier on when he spoke of some of the challenges we face globally, I think, over the last 2 years. And I think, out of that, it's clearly identified the importance to adjust to the digital world. I think from a South African context, when we look at this, I think much has started and much progress has been made in the initial phases to embrace some of these changes and start to adapt to current advancements and also future ones that may come. But I think from a South African context, I think we are still in infancy stages of this transition from an LPG industry perspective. I think one of the first things that needs to change would be mindset. I think that part of the transition is the key one. Once the mindset changes, it becomes easier. And obviously the focus to be on adaptation of operations. And I think what consumers generally look for is the speed at which you can service them, the customer service element, and overall user experience. And ultimately, I think that user experience and customer satisfaction is the most important element ultimately. From an association perspective, we've tried to lead the way in this transition. We've had to make a lot of changes to the way we operate, and I think the pandemic sparked a lot of that. And some of the things we've done, to sort of digitize some of our key services that we offer to industry, including our training courses now being offered, quite a lot of them online. All of our permit applications are now online, and a key one that we've transitioned to is the certificate of conformity that we issue, which is now online as well. And the digitization of these certificates have proven to have multifold benefits. One for the installers and two for the consumers who they issued to. And two key factors we found that it starts to eliminate risk on. And the one risk that it eliminates is non-conformant installations done by unauthorized personnel. So that certificate eliminates a lot of that risk. And the second one is fraudulent certificates that get issued to the end consumer. So it starts to protect the consumer as well. So we've got about 50% of our installers that have now transitioned to that system, and then hopefully by mid to end of this year, all of the practitioners would have transitioned, and I think it's going to have a huge benefit. One of the other things we found is the time save. There's been a lot of time saved because the manual processes have now freed up resources. And what we find is with this resource, we're actually able to focus a little bit more on the customer interaction and customer relationship elements, which we never had the time for because of the manual processes before. From a user experience point of view, the feedback that we've been getting is a lot of the users have enjoyed the self-service and self-access mechanisms that have been made available to them, from the application processes, automated invoicing, payment mechanisms, and all of this available at their fingertips. So I think it's had a huge impact. But like I say, I think we're at starting phases.
Yeah, one of the things our association found at the beginning of this pandemic, when we had to go into a virtual world with workshops, for example, we would typically go into a country and run a workshop and have 40 or 50 people attend. But now we're running these workshops online and we're getting 150 people attend, simply because these people ordinarily would not be able to afford to travel to the hotel in the country where the workshop would be held. Have you found the outreach to your services, has that grown as a result of greater reach with people who would otherwise not have been involved?
Most definitely, most definitely. I think even access to all of our members, I think very much, like WLPG, we obviously have our hub in Johannesburg, but it's given us the opportunity to reach members across the country literally overnight. So it's really had a major impact.
Yeah, you can't beat the handshake though, but you got to be careful now, even with a handshake. I'm going to bring Cindy now in. Cindy, you welcome again. And I heard your discussion with Andre, and I wrote down some things: engage folks, have a good back office, be open-minded, and work with the provider. Tell me some interesting stories that you had with your folks, because I'm sure that this introduction of new technology didn't go without a few road bumps.
Oh, it definitely had its challenges, and still does sometimes, including them in the process, training, sharing, what is the process going to be? What are the benefits? What are the challenges? And just like you have to promote that with your customers, you have to promote that with your drivers and your dispatch staff.
So any funny stories?
Well, the best this year was coming out of the winter. One of my veteran drivers, who tends to be very competitive, who could route better than we could in the dispatch office, could route better than any software. He said at the end of the season, I'm really glad we're doubling our monitor program this year. It really saved us. And I love going to every 1,000-gallon tank and delivering 700 or more gallons. They're competitive by nature. So, in my opinion, you can't put a value on no runouts for your customers, and you can't put a value on your team feeling successful.
Yeah, and I guess there's a great advantage in having somebody like him talking to his peers,
Yes.
who are probably a little bit wary about getting involved.
Yeah, he laughed and said, 8 years ago, I would have never said that would come out of my mouth,
Right. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, there's a great humanizing story behind every one of these digitalization transitions, I'm sure. Andre, I've just seen one question come through for Nick from a fellow Kenyan. On average, Nick, what percentage, if any, does your track and trace solution increase the overall cost of the LPG? And are clients okay with it, since they will have to pay for it over a longer period?
Yeah, it's a great question, Stephen. Thank you. I was actually just typing an answer, so I just don't do it.
All right.
But,
okay. Well, everybody
so
can hear now.
That, yeah, conservatively, 20% above the kind of prevailing retail rate for LPG is the kind of premium you can charge for selling gas in a pay-as-you-go format. We've been focused mostly in urban areas, so I want to caveat that. And what we've seen is that still on a daily basis leads to a lower kind of cost to cook per day than with charcoal or kerosene. So we're still below what they'd be spending on charcoal or kerosene, with just having a premium of about 20%. We've seen much higher as well. I mean, it's a good number to go off of.
Right, and this is simply because you can turn the gas off when you're not using it, whereas with a charcoal stove, you have to sustain that through the day when you want to cook an evening meal, and you have a lot of wastage.
Yeah, there's an efficiency play. Customers, they know LPG is the kind of best fuel available. They know it's aspirational, that they want to use it. It's far more convenient to cook with. You can control your heat, you can turn it off, as you mentioned, when you don't need it. And so they're willing to pay extra for that, but also it's because the other fuels are so expensive. Again, in urban areas, charcoal and kerosene are quite expensive, and so we can still be cheaper with a 20% premium.
But has it been tough to bust that myth? Because the myth is that charcoal is cheaper than LPG and wood is cheaper than LPG, but you've proven that in fact it's not necessarily the case when you look at the actual energy that you're using to cook a meal.
Yeah, we when we started, we did a lot of cooking events in the community, and we'd have folks cook with charcoal and kerosene, and also cook on the Pego system. And then we'd see how much was spent between the different systems, how much was used, and we'd also eat the food afterwards. I think there is also a stigma around some foods that taste better with charcoal.
Yeah.
So there has been, as I mentioned before, some behavior change needed to get going.
And the whole digitalization technology that's involved in the smart meter, are there any other applications for that, do you see, beyond LPG?
I mean, so I think that the core technology is not super novel. I mean, when you put it all together and use it for LPG, it is. But I think there's some really exciting things that could be used for in the future. You're getting a lot of really unique information in the household. You're seeing households purchase gas. You're seeing how they consume. There's opportunities for cross-selling other products into the home using that information. You have a much stronger connection to a home in an area that usually isn't well mapped, and especially like in informal settlements, so you can help with addressing. And then even when you look at potential for carbon finance, there's also great opportunities around monitoring, reporting, and verification using IoT. So I think there's a lot of other applications beyond just the pay-as-you-go component.
Right, Andre, I've got a little thing down the bottom of my screen saying there's 18 messages in the chat box. Can you summarize what they are?
I will. Actually, Ellen has been also answering for some questions. So there were questions to Ellen regarding how does the smart ring communicate? What was the contact from Ellen from Centec? Also pricing models, and to Ultimate Propane, how it does work. And so Cindy also answered to that. One that remains unanswered, it's coming from Bonga, from Eswatini Energy Regulatory Authority. And just wondering, with the volatility of the gas prices in the country, how does digitalization of the LPG operations affect prices in a country that is still trying to promote the use of LPG? Very interesting question. Probably I'm going to throw it to Nirvan and Nick. Feel free to answer.
Well, both are muted, so Nirvan, you have a go first.
Yeah, thanks. I think it's a very important question. I think we even in South Africa, currently looking at different options. We've just had a pricing model change where previously we were working with it was based on the 93 octane pricing, I think it was, and recently I think during 2021 we moved to Saudi CP, and obviously end consumers tend to bear some of the impact of pricing changes. We've obviously had some refinery challenges also in the country, and going to be now reliant more on importing of LPG. So yeah, I'm not sure I can sort of pin an exact answer to that. But ultimately, I think the impact of pricing places a huge challenge, especially when it comes to trying to grow an industry. LPG is playing a really important role in South Africa at the moment, especially with the energy crisis that we face. And the simple applications of LPG, just purely in cooking, space heating, and water heating, I mean, it's your basic applications. LPG is fantastic for those. So on the one hand, trying to promote that and push that as much as possible. It's a very difficult balance to try and maintain, I would say.
Thank you. Quick thought.
Go ahead, Nick, go ahead.
Sorry, just real quick. So kind of echoing Nirvan's point, I think customers obviously have to absorb some of this price increase. The pay-as-you-go functionality does help out customers with a liquidity challenge. So as the entire cost of the cylinder goes up, selling gas in small amounts helps them have access to it, but obviously to a point. Where digitization can maybe help a bit with pricing that we've seen through our operations is you can have a lot less cylinders potentially moving through the supply chain per household that's consuming, and that can be realized as a working capital cost reduction for gas companies, and that might be able to be reflected, hopefully, on price to the customer. Now, obviously, with the volatility we're seeing, that's not going to help them out a lot, but I do think long term that could reduce the cost of LPG for customers.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Nirvan. And Nick, keeping with you, we got a question from George Gerto, which is, what are the advantages to use the smart cylinders technology in comparison with using small cylinder of 1 kg or 2 kgs, for example?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there were some original, companies that kind of predated Pago that tested small cylinder applications. There's a couple challenges I think that are worth noting. One is, for small cylinders, you have to really look at the constraints on the infrastructure. You're going to need a lot more cylinders kind of moving around. They have to be refilled, and there were attempts at micro refilling, which I think there was concerns around safety. But I think we always start with the customer, right? And I think from a customer experience perspective, having a cylinder with only, say, 50 cents worth of gas in it or $1 worth of gas in it, and then running out and having to carry that to be refilled is a very clunky experience. So if there's a way for us to reduce the burden on the infrastructure by using a larger cylinder, but selling the gas on a fractional basis, I think it's better for the customer and probably safer, and less expensive for gas companies to implement.
Thank you. You are on fire today, Nick. One more for you. How quickly does a customer in Kenya receive gas after paying it through the smart meter?
Yeah, so another great question. So the cylinder, you kind of have a distributed inventory in this model, right? So the gas cylinder's in the household, but the fuel in the cylinder is not entirely owned by the customer. So when they top up their account, it's reflected on the meters. They might have, say, $1 worth of gas they can now consume, and that gas is already in their home. So the valve opens, they can start using it immediately. Obviously, when the gas cylinder runs out, it has to be replaced, but we use the information around their consumption behavior and the fuel level to do just-in-time delivery. So they should always have access to gas.
Awesome. That's
Andre, I'm going to jump in before you ask Nick any more questions. I've got a question for Cindy, and we've talked about bulk and using telemetry to maximize the load size. Is Holtzman involved in the cylinder business as well?
We do not do exchange, but we do refill, and we have a large clientele of temp heat for builders, construction, that sort of thing. So it is a very lucrative part of our business.
Right, and you know where all those cylinders are, do you?
Yes, we do, and everything's serialized, and most of those tanks can be managed with telemetry with Innova's tank monitor. Yeah. Because if I asked a question to a large LPG distributor who's involved in the cylinder business, how many cylinders do they have? I think they'd struggle to know, because tracking of cylinders is one of the big goals, I think, for organizations with big cylinder populations. And with the cost of steel, it's ever more important. So those assets are extremely important to track.
Yeah, I mean, in the early days, there were little widgets that you could put onto a cylinder, but the cost of those was sort of $3 or $4. But now you can communicate with the cloud, and that's brought that unit cost down, which has allowed the opportunity to look at tracing cylinders much more and tracking cylinders much more closely. So I think that opportunity still sits out there.
Absolutely.
And it sort of goes back to this question that Andre asked Nick about the cylinder size. I mean, 1 kg cylinders, and whoever asked that question. I remember when Indonesia introduced their LPG kerosene conversion program, they used a 3 kg cylinder, and their marketing director told me once that the distribution channel are throwing them around like coconuts. And that's one of the biggest challenges if you have a small cylinder population. So I think the cylinders that you have, Nick, in Kenya, are about 12, 13 kilograms, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, usually there's a 6 kg and a 13 kg, the two primary
6 as well. Okay. Andre, how are the questions going? I see the numbers going up.
we have one more question from Mike Ferrari. Hi, Mike. Right. Thank you for joining us. And Mike's saying, while we have talked a lot about developing countries and how digitalization has improved the overall position and the use of LPG, how do you believe LPG digital advancements will keep LPG relevant in the energy conversation in developed countries with heavier competition in the sector? I think this is a great question. Probably Cindy, maybe you want to answer to this one?
Absolutely. I think that, we're always competing with other fuels, and the propane industry has a tough job proving that they are the reliable fuel source. And I think the big difference is, as we innovate digitally, we're better able to serve those customers. Our efficiency and savings has been tremendous. We started in the 40 range and now are in the 57% efficiency. And so being able to pass that on to our customers and use those assets other places, grow our market, and our community presence is really, really important to us. And that the competition is a good thing, so that we can keep propane at a price where consumers can really pay for it and see it as the reliable source that it is.
Okay, thank you, Cindy. Go ahead, David.
Thanks, Cindy. I'm just hoping that Tucker's going to suddenly appear on this conversation. But one of the questions I was going to ask him, and I can ask everybody, is how can companies use digital tools to improve their customer experience? That was a topic that he was really keen to address. So I'm going to ask you guys, and it's coming back to this consumer interface. So how can companies use digital tools to improve their customer experience? Anybody got any thoughts? I mean, Andre, you can answer that one.
Well, it's more and more, and we have been having this discussion with Tucker, but I think it's applicable pretty much in globally. The new generations are used to a different type of service, and the more and more we go into the 21st century, it's much more about the digital experience, the care for the customer. Again, there's a little bit of everything. There are those customers that they just want it to be delivered cylinders or gas, and they don't even want to hear about the LPG company. But more and more, we feel more, especially on the younger generations, the need to be informed, the need to be engaged. And so digitalization that can go through a general customer application with new communication channel through in-app notifications, for instance, order or paying by an application, something like this that can help the customer journey from end to end. I would say that digitalization has a crucial part in it. I don't know about Cindy, Nick, Nirvan, if you want to add something.
Absolutely. It's not just paying your bills. That's extremely important. Creating budgets, requesting service. There are so many places where it goes beyond just tank level. Customers are interested in their usage. Thermostats and smart technology is in most homes now, at least in the US. And so customers want to engage with their mobile device and know more than ever what they're using, why, what other options do they have, appliances and so forth, which only helps you grow gallons and more of a relationship with the customer.
Yeah, I don't know whether we'll ever get to the stage where you'll be able to say, hey, Siri, how much LPG have I got in my cylinder? I think that's the holy grail.
I think we are, and maybe, the youth,
we're close,
and youth generation, like Mike, can help us to, to drive digitalization to that point. I think it would be, amazing. We got another question for Nick before we wrap up. Nick, what is your business model to deploy your technology in other markets and regions?
Yeah, thanks. So we're a B2B company, so we look for strong partners on the ground with a market presence and a customer base that we can work with. So market entry for us is finding the right partner, and then we sell them our technology and also provide, obviously, support, helping them set up and get the customers transferred over to this new business model. So yeah, we have a partnership model as a way to expand into new markets.
Nirvan, I'm going to ask you one more question because we haven't really heard from you much, and I'm going to ask you what if you could pick 3 innovations that have been introduced into the South African market already, what would they be?
Yeah, so I think David, a lot of the technologies have started. I mean, I think we've spoken in length about the pay-as-you-go system, and it's been introduced in some regions in South Africa. I think it's going to have a really amazing impact. I think it's the biggest thing is it's economically suitable. It puts the end consumer in control because they control their spending based on economic availability. So that one's really something that's started, and I think will definitely grow. The other one is probably linked as well, is a metering system for multi-dwellings that we have that are fed by bulk tanks. And again, it's the motivating factor because it puts the consumer in control of spend. And that's something that we're finding is almost becoming a prerequisite for especially for new dwellings that are coming up like that. A third one, again, I think the link is pretty similar. It's an auto refill tank monitoring technology that's been recently introduced. And what it does is, I think Nick touched on it a bit as well. It basically informs the supplier when the LPG in those tanks reach a certain level, and then they automatically arrange for top-ups through a seamless ordering process. And basically the customer doesn't even know, that I was actually going to run out. I've now been topped up and off you go. So I think for me, those 3 would be top. There's a few that I think on the safety side that have going to have real good benefit. I think the driver fatigue, we still deliver quite a lot of LPG through road, and I think the driver fatigue technology that Ellen spoke about would be beneficial. But I'm just looking at the clock, and I think like I said, we're still in infancy stages. I think there's a lot that we can do, and I do see this progress quite far.
Thanks very much. Well, thank all of you. And I'm going to pass back to Andre, but when I pass it back to you, Andre, I was going to talk about the Challenge 22 topic, which is looking at opportunities for digitalization in the LPG industry. So hopefully come back in 6 months' time and we can share some of the submissions that we've had back from this startup competition, which, as you say, we're going to launch very soon. So over to you to close.
Thank you, David, and thank you, everyone. This wraps our session today. This was a super interesting session, and it stands clear that industrial IoT and digitalization are paramount to make the LPG industry safer, smarter, and more efficient. I would like to highlight, just like David mentioned, that World LPG Challenge 22 will be launched this March, to grant startups a chance to win a prize money and to pitch in front of the LPG industry in New Delhi in December. So stay tuned and help us to spread the word all over the startups in the world. I want to thank you all for being with us today and for your interest in this edition of the LPG Talks live session, and of course, in IoT and digitalization. Also, a very special thank you to James, Cindy, Ellen, David, Nick, Nirvan, and Tucker, even though he was not with us, for being here with us today. In case you want to share this session with your colleagues, I'm happy to inform you that this session was recorded and it will be available for all of you. We're launching the normal exit pool, so stay tuned and provide us some feedback on how to improve our sessions. Thank you, and looking forward to seeing you in the next LPG Talks Live. Stay safe.
Thanks very much. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.